Welcome to Timeline Ago. Today, we're going to journey deep into our own past to answer a really big question. How did we, Homo sapiens, end up being the only humans left on Earth? It's a story of survival, of mystery, and a past that was way more crowded than you probably think. So, let's dive in.
I want to start with this quote because it just completely flips the script on how we see ourselves. For almost all of human history, this was the absolute truth. We weren't special. We weren't the stars of the show. We were just kind of there. So, to really understand our crazy, unlikely rise to the top, we have to start at the very beginning. We have to accept that for millions of years, humans were just another animal, trying not to get eaten, hanging out in the middle of the food chain.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The scale is just mind-blowing. Physics kicks off 13.5 billion years ago. Life, biology, gets going almost 4 billion years ago. And then, way over on the far right, in this teeny tiny sliver of time, the first members of our genus Homo finally show up. We were incredibly late to the party.
And this really says it all, doesn't it? For most of our history, this was us. We weren't changing the world, we were just living in it. You had anxious mothers, kids playing, guys trying to show off. Really, no different from a troop of chimpanzees or baboons. No one, absolutely no one, would have ever guessed we'd one day be walking on the moon.
Okay, so this is where our story takes a really fascinating turn. The fact that we're the only humans on the planet today, well, that's actually super recent. And honestly, it's pretty weird. For most of history, that just wasn't how it was.
To get this, we've got to get the biology straight. We are Homo sapiens. We're the wise species of the human genus. But here's the key. We weren't the only species in that genus. The word human didn't just mean us.
Earth used to be home to a whole family of humans, and they were all living at the same time. You had the famous Neanderthals kicking around Europe, Homo erectus in Asia, who, by the way, survived for almost 2 million years. That's a record we'll be lucky to even get close to. There were even tiny, hobbit-like humans on the island of Flores. The planet was a busy place.
And if you look at our most famous relatives, the Neanderthals, the comparison is just wild. They were stronger than us, way more muscular, and, now get this, they actually had brains that were bigger than ours. So this wasn't some simple story of the smartest guys winning. Something else was going on here.
So what was our secret sauce? What was our edge? Well, it turns out our greatest strengths, like our huge brains, they didn't come for free. They came with massive and, frankly, pretty risky evolutionary costs.
Think of it like an energy bill, right? Our brains are only about 2 to 3% of our body weight, but they eat up a quarter of our energy when we're just sitting around. For our ape cousins, it's only 8%. That's a huge energy gap that we had to make up for sometime.
And here's how we paid for it. We basically made a trade. We swapped muscle for brain power. We got physically weaker as our minds got stronger. It's kind of humbling, but it's a fact. In a one-on-one fight with a chimpanzee, we would lose badly.
And walking on 2 feet? That set off a whole other domino effect. Sure, it freed up our hands to make cool tools, which is great, but it also meant our hips had to get narrower. And that made childbirth incredibly dangerous, especially since our babies' heads were getting bigger. The evolutionary fix? Just give birth earlier. And that's why human babies are born totally helpless. It's what made us social animals. It literally takes a village to raise a human child.
So, how did we pay for all this? All these huge energy costs? One word: fire. Taming fire was the absolute game changer. Cooking food basically pre-digests it for us. This let our intestines get shorter, and a shorter gut uses way less energy. So where did all that extra energy go? You guessed it, straight to our power-hungry brains.
And all that brings us to the central mystery of our story. About 70,000 years ago, sapiens started moving out of Africa. But the thing is, the world was already full of other kinds of humans. So when we showed up on their doorstep, what happened to them?
This is the big question, isn't it? When we met our long-lost cousins, was it a big family reunion, a story of love and interbreeding, or was it something darker? A story of replacement, conflict, maybe even genocide? For a really long time, scientists just couldn't agree.
Then, in 2010, the Neanderthal genome was finally mapped, and it gave us the shocking answer. Turns out, it was a little bit of both. This chart shows it all. If you have European or Middle Eastern ancestry, you've got up to 4% Neanderthal DNA. And if you're Melanesian, you might have up to 6% Denisovans DNA. We didn't just replace them, we mingled.
But even though there was some interbreeding, it obviously wasn't a complete merger. I mean, the percentages are pretty small. And in the end, they all vanished. We'll probably never know for sure what happened, but this quote, I think it captures a really tragic possibility. Because if there's one thing our Sapiens history shows, it's that we're not always that tolerant of differences. And so we come to this moment. About 30,000 years ago, the very last of our known relatives, the Neanderthals, disappeared forever. After millions of years of a planet full of different humans, one species was finally and completely alone.
And that leaves us with one last, really profound thought to chew on. Being alone has shaped who we are. It makes it really easy for us to see this giant gap between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. But what if the Neanderthals were still here? What if other humans had survived? Would we still see ourselves as so special then? It's a question that just completely reframes our entire place in the story of life on Earth.